And thank you all for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. 9 members of the TPLF leadership, including the group's infamous old guard, Subhat Negga, have been flown to Addis Ababa today. The 9 individuals were apprehended in the past couple of days during a joint military manhunt by the Ethiopian Defense Forces and the Federal Police in Tigray's hills and bushes. These members of the warmongering clique were seen handcuffed while arriving in Addis Ababa. Subhat Negga was the ringleader in TPLF's anti-Ethiopia approach, holding the reins until early 1980s when Meles Zenawi succeeded him. Other detainees include Kedusan Negga, former House Speaker of the State of Tigray, Tewedros Hagos, former President of Meles Leadership Academy, Abadi Zamu, who used to be Ambassador of Ethiopia to Sudan, Dr. Solomon Kidane, former head of Addis Ababa Transport Bureau and the Tigray Urban Development Bureau, Gabramedhin Tawalda, former head of the State's Trade Bureau, Walde Györgis Desta, former head of the State's Transport Bureau, Teklaweni Asafa, and Mirat Teklai, former legal advisor of the State's Council. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has endorsed Professor Hirut Waldemariam, Ethiopia's candidate for African Union Commissioner of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation. Quote, having served in my cabinet as Minister for the Ministry of Science and Higher Education and currently serving as my social sector advisor, Professor Hirut is an exceptional candidate for the post, he tweeted. Professor Hirut has served in 4 ministerial positions so far. She was also the first female vice president of Addis Ababa University. Professor Hirut worked as an instructor and researcher in the same university for more than 25 years. A mother of 3, Professor Hirut has proved her worth, registering outstanding results in improving quality, relevance, and inclusiveness in higher education and science. Demek Mekonnen, Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Ethiopia, and Joseph Borrell, High Representative for the Foreign Affairs and Security Policy of European Union, conferred yesterday over the phone and exchanged views on the current humanitarian situation in the Tigray regional state. Demek briefed the High Representative on the reconstruction and rehabilitation activities in the region, which are being implemented under a cluster-based coordination mechanism. The government and humanitarian organizations are working in close coordination to effectively address the humanitarian needs in the region, he said. Both the Deputy Prime Minister and the High Representative have agreed to continue to work closely to scale up the efforts in the provision of humanitarian assistance in the region and strengthen the closer collaboration between Ethiopia and the European Union.
Policy Matters is a conversation platform which aims to provide reasoned analysis and context to the activities, reforms, and policies of the federal government of Ethiopia. Exploring various reforms the government is undertaking, the conversation platform aspires to enable nuanced and informed understanding.
After 2 years of work, how do you see today the impact of the policy and also the ongoing law, and what kind of changes are now being achieved or in the process of being implemented?
I think the change is huge, and it starts with the commitment of the government. The government has been very serious, and my Prime Minister has been very clear and consistent with the freedom that the media needs to be granted. The media deserved that sort of, they needed it, they deserved that sort of freedom for them to be able to, in a meaningful way, play their role in the process of democratization in general.
How do you see the restructuring also in comparative aspect?
A government is ready to let it go and then lead the industry by itself. And this is a very important step.
You're watching Addis News Hour. Addis Ababa City Administration graduated over 28,000 youth in waste management system and environment protection. The city administration said it will provide budget and working place to the youth. Addis Ababa City Deputy Mayor Adanech Abebe called upon the youth to contribute their share in the effort to create a prosperous and a clean city. Alula Teklamariam has more.
Proper implementation and management of integrated urban beautification, solid waste management, and green economy development are believed to be high contributors to the unemployment reduction in cities. Addis Ababa City currently generates various job opportunities to enable the youth make an income and reduce unemployment in the city, where solid waste management and urban beautification seem to be prioritized. The 28,000 today's graduates are thus expected to contribute share in beautifying Sheger.
Addis requires your commitment and steadfast effort to further maintain its long-standing and historic fame. We are fully confident that you will be a model of hardworking who play your role in the keeping Addis livable and clean.
The Deputy Mayor also calls upon the graduates to bring about the expected outcome in the field.
I, on behalf of myself and the city administration, want to recall you that you have a irreplaceable role to make your own city a prosperity hub. You need to make use of this opportunity to transform our city. We also need your private success out of this business.
As to the Deputy Mayor, the job creation efforts in these sectors should remain a culture in the community.
As Ethiopia presses ahead with reforms, the argument for and against constitutional amendments persists to this day. While some say the constitution ratified in 1995 could be amended based on Articles 104 and 105, a legal expert approached by ATV nevertheless disagrees with this, saying the constitution is one of the most rigid in the world. The expert suggested setting a new playing field rather than going to the predictable amendment process. The Ethiopian constitution under Article 104 and 105 sets forth amending clauses for formal constitutional changes and sets procedures to be observed in the process, both in the initiation and approval. Emmanuel Jorge reports.
The Ethiopian constitution has been a source of endless debate and deliberation since its introduction back in 1995. A study published by Afrobarometer, a Pan-African and partisan survey research network operating in Africa, shows that constitutional amendments are favored by most Ethiopians. Also concerning amendment issues, many claim that Ethiopian constitution is one of the most rigid constitutions in the world. Legal expert Theodros Getachew agrees with this claim and said, let alone amending, initiating is very rigorous and difficult task.
Those people who are saying the Ethiopian constitution is rigid to amend, they have some kind of truth. They have some kind of truth. Not only the amendment. Starting from the initiation of the amendment, it's really rigid, we can say. Of course, a constitution cannot be amended easily. That's a global practice, not only in Ethiopia. But the Ethiopian case scenario is a little bit somehow tight. For example, if someone wants to initiate, not only amend, but to initiate the amendment, to initiate the proposal even, you have to secure 2/3 vote of the House of People's Representatives, according to 104 of the FEDRI Constitution. Or you should optionally you should secure 2/3 vote of the House of Federation, or 1/3 of the state councils, all the state councils.
He added that the procedural requirements are very rigid to the extent of making the constitution impossible to amend.
When we come to the amendment procedure, we have two kinds of procedures according to the 1987 FEDRI Constitution. One is the amendment procedure which have been designed for the Chapter 3 of the Constitution. This Chapter 3 of the Constitution is stating about fundamental human and democratic rights. So to amend that Chapter 3, it's almost impossible. Those procedures we have already put it in the Constitution are almost makes it impossible. because you have to secure majority vote in all state members of the federation. You have to secure 2/3 vote of the House of People's Representative, that is a lawmaker. Generally, we can agree that the Ethiopian constitution is one of the rigid constitution in the world, not to amend also, but to initiate the proposal also.
Teodros suggested setting a new playing field that can lead to a new draft constitution in collaboration with all stakes rather than starting over the amendment procedure.
I prefer there should be a very high level of political commitment from all sides. So instead of playing with this kind of very rigid constitutional amendment, it's better to think of making a new constitution, designing a new constitution by consulting all the concerned bodies and the people of Ethiopia.
The FDRE constitution encompasses a constitutional provision that spells out how the constitution can be amended. However, there has not yet been a single formal constitutional amendment. There have been instances of actual but unwritten constitutional changes in the course of application that have been occurring in Ethiopia for which formal constitutional amendment cannot account for.
Welcome back again. The Ethiopian Broadcast Authority says some foreign media outlets misguided and deliberately biased reports on the law enforcement operation in Tigray has set a bad precedent. Director General of the authority, Getachew Dungu, told ETV that the fact that foreign media outlets largely remained mute in the aftermath of Mekele's fall to the federal troops is indicative of the reality that these outlets are only interested in magnifying conflict. Goshu Melissa reports.
Following the assault on federal troops stationed in Mekele, the federal government has undertaken a law enforcement operation against the TPLF. However, the operation was given a slanted and deliberately distorted image by some foreign media outlets.
In northern Ethiopia threatens to tip that country into civil war.
But first, fighting between Ethiopia's military and the heavily armed Tigray region has escalated.
Why did the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed misjudge this situation?
The media should provide the people with the...
Talking to ETV English, Getachew Dungu, Director General of the Ethiopian Broadcast Authority, said some foreign media failed to report accurate and verified information to the world.
What we witnessed during the reporting of some foreign media, not all, some of them tried to report responsibly, did their journalistic job well, while others failed to do their failed to discharge their journalistic responsibilities well. So, as you mentioned earlier, the reporters tended to be very biased, one-sided information, unfounded, unsupported information very commonly.
Some of these media outlets went to the extent of telling the world that the federal government has launched war against Tigray and that there is wide ethnic profiling of Tigrayans all over Ethiopia.
They described the war as civil war. That was not the case at all. It was a law enforcement operation against some aggressors, but from the headlines to the details of the stories, they wanted to suggest that it was a civil war and also ethnic conflicts between the ethnic Tigray and Amharans, which was not again the case. So sort of generalizations here and there.
Although the fighting in Tigray caught the attention of foreign media outlets, the rehabilitation and post-conflict reconstruction has received little, if any, coverage by these media outlets. The Director General reflected on why that was the case.
It indicates that they are more interested in the conflicts. Not all of them, but there's some media outlets and individual reporters, because the conflicts seem to sell better than peace and stability, reconstruction stories. So, when we didn't have telecommunication and electricity, they were reporting, and they were taking things beyond extent and saying that this number of civilians are going to suffer and going to be affected because of lack of food, and there is going to be crisis, all kinds of negative predictions. But when that was not the case, and then when stability was restored, the number of reports coming out of these media outlets dwindled. It decreased significantly. Why? Because, as I said earlier, they seem to be interested more in our conflicts.
The authorities said it has engaged some foreign and locally hired journalists to follow journalistic principle.
What my authority is doing, we're engaging the journalists, professionally engaging them, challenging them, whether their reports could be verified and what their... Normally, we don't ask for sources of information, but we demand them to make sure that their stories are correct and their claims are right.
Every foreign media should respect the laws of the land and terms and conditions stated in their contractual agreement with the authority.
To news from an international source, Donald Trump has tweeted his way through his presidency. It defined his term. It's been his signature way to get his hand-mediated message to followers. But now, Twitter has kicked the US president off for good, saying he was using it to incite violence. It's a move that will deepen his political isolation as he faces widespread criticism and the prospect of a second impeachment over his supporters' riot through the Capitol. Emmanuel Jorge presents the story from TRT.